Welcome to Raindrops' Nooby Point of View show, where I review games that I play for the first time playing it, but it's not a first impressions review because I would have played it for a little bit before I record everything, put it together, and compile a video on my opinions and thoughts. So, each game is different, yeah. I did Black and White 2, not the Pokemon game. It was actually the game by Lionhead Studios, and I played it for about 5 hours. So let's get on with showing my opinion for this and what I thought about the 5 hours that I played it. Okay, so some of you who've never heard of Black and White 2 will obviously be wondering, what is it? Or if you're curious, you might already know what it is and just want a little bit of feedback should I get the game. Well, let me break it down for you. Black and White 2 was released in 2005 by Lionhead Studios, and it was not very well known, but Lionhead Studios was because the founder, as you should know, was Peter Molyneux, who made amazing games such as Theme Hospital, Dungeon Keeper, Magic Carpet, one of his first earliest games. I almost said Erst, sorry about that. And of course the Fable trilogy, which is very well known. The game itself is a God game, which were a lot of his experiments were with God games. At least to what I realized, such as Populous. Populous was also one of his first God games. He defined he defined God games. He is the father, as I think, of God games. And Black and White 2 was very ingenious for its time. It had a lot of elements which nobody had dared to implement into a game before, and he was risky and he did it, and some of them came out well and some of them came out a bit iffy. So let's get on to my first impressions, my opinion of the entire game. Actually, not the entire game, just the 5 hours that I played it, but I think I got a pretty well-rounded opinion of the 5 hours I played.
Daughter's fallen pregnant. She says no man has touched her. It's an immaculate conception, so it must be down to you. You are responsible for the child.
Okay, so my first impressions. I will break it down into bullet points so it's easier to hear me, understand me visually. It's all great and exciting. It's my first show, so it might be a little bit choppy, might be a little bit strange, but I'll get used to it, I promise. The controls were very difficult to get used to. That's point number one. The controls are very strange. They weren't your usual move around the map, do stuff, like in Civ where everything's dropped down. You could actually zoom into your people, see them move around, see the ants on the ground if you wanted to. Scrolling and moving around, you had to use the middle mouse button, and you could rotate the entire map. But the controls are very strange to get used to. It was just like, what am I doing? And the footage, you might see how awkward I am with the controls, because it's just so strange, especially when interacting with the creature, which I'll bring up next. Or not next, I'll bring up eventually. Second point, it had really good graphics for its time. For an older game that was done in 2005, that is about seven years ago, it's gorgeous. I mean, when you zoom out from the entire island, it's breathtaking. When you go in, they aren't, Call of Duty Modern Warfare type graphics. They aren't, detailed to the point of the blemish on his skin. But to its time, you could see the ants and the grass and every single detail on the ground if you zoomed in. And if you zoomed out, you could see all of the details of the island itself that you played on, which I thought was amazing. The humor was great. That's point 3. A lot of humor was added. It was definitely a Peter Molyneux game. I'm pretty sure that more humor would have been added if he was still with Bullfrog when he made this game instead of Lionhead Studios, because they were monitored by EA, and some things I'm sure EA didn't allow. But some of the stuff's just great. It's really good. Point number 4. I had a problem with the supervisors. Sometimes they're really great. If you don't notice or you don't realize that there's 2 supervisors in Black and White 2. You have the angel character, which is good, and he's telling you what to do to be good. And then you have the devilly character that's telling you what to do to be bad. So you know right off the bat what you have to do if you want to be a good character or a bad character, which I like. That's good about the supervisors. But the problem is, if you don't do what they want you to do, they will start yelling at you to click that gold scroll or yelling at you to go gather the wheat. And it's just like, oh God, please stop. And I'm pretty sure it was because I didn't get that far in the game. I played 5 hours and I did not get that far. I got to the first main island. I played through the tutorial bits. I didn't even bother recording that because it was so noisy. But even the first island where they let you do everything by yourself, it was sometimes really difficult to get over the fact that those supervisors were constantly in your ear and whining about it. Point number 5. The creature was great. I loved him. The interaction sometimes is very awkward with him because it's like, I don't want the leash. I want to like pet him. I want to train him. But the creature was humorous. He had weird things that he wanted to do. I remember one time he asked me if he wanted to poop on a villager. He asked me, can I poop on a villager? And of course, if you don't say anything, he'll do it anyways. He's just kind of giving you a heads up. Hey, I'm gonna poop on this dude. Is that okay? But that's wonderful. I love him. And you have different choices of two. You can choose between several different animals. The lion is the default one. I took the default. The side quests, which is point 6, were a fun way to get some money and something that nobody forced you to do. You could do them if you wanted to, but you didn't have to. And I'm pretty sure you can complete the game without ever even touching a side quest if you're not the type of person who likes side quests. But if you love humorous side quests, you love to get in the nutty, gritty, like dark sides of humor, do the side quests. They were great. And the enemy, you get to hear like the mind of your enemy, so you can tell what sort of turn they were doing. I don't know if I liked that. I mean, you're a god, so it made a lot of sense, but at the same time, they were constantly whining and complaining and being angry about you and saying you should die and you're just like the man of the earth, and they're just constantly saying that. And saying they're gonna attack you, but you have your walls up, which they can't get through, so they just sort of sit there at your borders, like doing nothing but insult you. And it gets annoying because you're trying to build up your city, do nice things around. At least I wasn't attacking anyone. I was being good for this playthrough. And so in my confined bubble of a city, I was perfectly safe from him. He could yell all the insults he wanted, but I was fine. Which brings me to my next point. That is the difficulty. It was normal. There was no difficulty settings, at least that I chose, but the difficulty wasn't too difficult and too easy. I mean, it was a little bit easy to begin with, but I think it's mainly because I was on the first island, even after 5 hours of gameplay. I was on the first island, and it was not much to do. I mean, if you were a bad character, I'm pretty sure your difficulty is upped by a lot because you have to send out a lot of troops, which causes a lot of unhappiness, which causes, people not to grow enough, and then you don't have enough people for troops, and it's always much more difficult being the bad guy, isn't it? I mean, that's just you notice that, but I would love in a game to be rewarded for being a bad guy. So, if I murder my people, I get something in return. I don't just murder my population and then don't get anything in return. Because that makes more sense. It seems like the bad guys are nerfed, or being the bad guy is nerfed because it's more. Well, it's not undoable, but it's very unfair. Because if you're a good guy, you can just bubble yourself in a wall and just sit there. Literally just sit there and win the game. And you don't have to do anything. But yeah, those were my first impressions. It could get better, it could get worse. I don't know, because I haven't played the rest. That's for you. If you think that this is a good enough game to play, you should find out yourself.
The Aztecs will rule this world.
I know you're tasting snappy, really it's a spark. Hurl it to my brother, using all the strength you've got.
Well, here we are, near the end, and to conclude, we have a pros and cons list that makes everything easier. So, pros, I would have to say the great, innovative, wonderful gameplay and experience that it is just a very different game, and it's very fun just for that reason. Something I've never seen before. The creature is wonderful. I love it. The wonderful side quests and lots of content. As far as I could see, it seemed very promising. If you want to see more awesome content than what you saw here in the fast videos. Just get it, it's great. The cons would have to be the annoying voices of the enemies and the helpers constantly nagging at you, the strange and awkward controls that took forever to get used to. And it's an older game, so there may be issues with bugs, definitely crashes with newer machines and installation problems. But if you don't worry about that, just get it. I think it's good. Thanks for watching, and please subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Hopefully you did. If not, I'm really sorry for wasting your time. Anyways, goodbye.
Praise be! The brew is finished! Let's drink it, lads! But first, a tribute to our benefactor.